My name is Bob Konopaski. Our next speaker is Lucie Kocum. Three things. Lucie's a brilliant woman. Equally important, Lucie's passionate about increasing inclusion. Added to these two strengths, Lucie knows the tools of science. If I listen to Lucie, I will witness her talent. If my eyes are open, I'll see her passion, the heart behind her research. If I take notes, I'll remember how to do research that makes a difference, and it'll change the way I think and act. Lucie.
I'm here. I'm good. Thanks, Bob. I was already actually quite emotional, actually. And I blame Caitlin. Because I share the feeling, like I did not prepare for feeling the way I do right now. And it's all good. It's good. It's very good. And when I talk about my positionality, then I think it might make some sense for those who don't know me. But what I've witnessed today is that, you know, when they say create the community you want, this is really, really good. This is really life-giving. So I'm grateful to all the presenters. I'm grateful to all the wonderful questions that have been asked. I'm grateful to all the volunteers who put their time, their energy, their talent into all the work of this conference, of the survey that I'm going to describe for you. It's been absolutely incredible. So I've collected myself. I'm showing you my power flower. And for those who don't know what a power flower is, basically, this is a tool, and it was actually developed in 1991. And it shows you, you look at it and you can add, you know, your own stuff in there too. But what these different elements are, so gender, race, ethnicity, language, politics, religion. I'm reading them out because the otter wouldn't, this can't be captured. Religion, family, makeup, socioeconomic status, age, education, body size, disability, immigration status, geographic origin and your geographic position now, sexuality and gender. And I think I started with race. So you put a dot where if it's on the outside, then you're closer to what positionality has more power. So for example, you know, I'm a middle-aged, and I say middle with a little bit of, you know, generosity. I'm a middle-aged woman, right? I identify though as non-binary. But to look at me, I'm a middle-aged white woman, right? I was born in Ottawa, and you know, we're on Turtle Island, also known as well, Canada is the country within Turtle Island, and it's a privileged country. It's viewed as you know, an incredibly privileged place. But then, so I've got lots of privilege, and then I've got lots of things that are not as privileging, or in fact sources of oppression. So the one thing that I want to focus on more, well, I'm going to say body size. Body size. I'm definitely north of where, you know, I'm a plus size woman. But disability status, I'm going to focus on that for just a sec, because this is pivotal to why I'm crying. So, and I'm going to say I'm a faculty member, so I have that privilege, absolutely. So the social status of faculty members, you know, it's assumed also that you have a certain wealth, which actually I don't. But it's assumed, and I do carry that privilege of my title. But disability. So I slammed right up against depression. Slammed up against depression when I needed something. So it's great when you don't need anything. You just, you sail along, you do your thing, but then all of a sudden, boom, I really needed something. And what I needed was an accommodations policy that would help guide all of those around me and myself so that I could steer, participate in steering this process. So that the system, I needed the system support. Well, we don't have one at SMU. We don't have an accessibility policy at SMU. There's a lot we don't have, and it creates these tiers. It creates trauma. It creates moments where the hundredth time you've screwed up the courage and the face to ask your question again, to ask for support when you need it, and to be faced with folks who just don't know. They don't have the tools to help. So my work on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, my work here with the EDIA group in psychology, all of this for me, this is my healing. This is how I get better. So now I'm going to just say operationalizing EDIA, like a nerdy psychologist who's totally into, measurement and things. I'm going to say that, but then I'm also going to say, actually, as Caitlin actually mentioned, and the team with their incredible work, variables like inclusion, it's not really just well, let's come up with a 20-item scale and let's go. Coming up with this survey was a whole process, and actually it's been, I'm sorry to say, delayed slightly again, but it will be out. It will be out early winter 2023. Please look out for it. And I have to say that because Nicole will kill me. Purpose of this talk is mostly to say, please fill out the survey, psychology community at SMU. But I wanted to say that the EDIA group, the advisory committee, the active ingredients of this, the coming together, what was needed in that recipe, if we want to call it that, leadership, right? Not directive from leadership, support of the grassroots. I've been trying and struggling. To be honest with you, I kind of hid some stuff, hid certain aspects of my identity, right? Because it's not necessarily the safest environment, right? But then I thought, well, I found my voice, and I try, and I struggle, and I try to make a difference. But without the leadership, you're kind of, ceaselessly striving. But you got the grassroots, you got the leadership, and you have people who want action. And that's how you get progress. Now, we don't want to talk. We don't want empty words. And so this conference is progress. I have so many notes. I have so many connections. And the survey as well. The purpose of it, there's some research there. There's some honors theses there. There's some questions that grad students want to pose. But it's a tool for progress. And I want to just emphasize knowledge here for a sec. So leadership, knowledge, action, the knowledge, so research, lived experience, and community, right? This is where we get our knowledge, not just research. And that's one thing in psychology that is growing. There's growing interest and focus on centering the lived experiences of people who have identities that are equity seeking, centering those folks and listening to the lived experience. And also key is not having that lived experience mediated through something, but I'll get to that in a sec if I don't know my clock anymore as I'm, okay, well, so what I wanted to do, so what I'm providing you when I talk about these different EDIA, because who operationalizes it, meaning who gets to define this stuff? Every company has some kind of, they'll say EDI because a lot of times accessibility is not, it's an afterthought. But these definitions come from research expertise, the EDIA committee discussions over the past 2 years. They come from reaching out to different folks to give input. And these are our definitions. Equity, providing equal opportunity and access to resources for everyone. Actively preventing bias, prejudice, discrimination, and harassment. You're going to notice as I'm reading these, they're actions. They're not a kind of a theory, or especially the performative, right? EDI statements. We will hope to begin to possibly look at perhaps, we strive to, just what does this mean to us? Diversity, recruiting, retaining people of diverse indigeneity, race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, family status, socioeconomic status, language, culture, national origin, religion, age, disability status, and political perspective. Recruiting and retaining, keeping folks. And Benita Bunjin gave a beautiful, powerful talk when she accepted her teaching award the other night at the alumni dinner. And she said, you know what keeps me, my retention? My students. We need to do a better job of retaining the diverse people we recruit. And I will tell you, a huge part of my retention is this conference right here. The people who, even though I'm online, I feel surrounded by people who think, brilliant people who think about this stuff and innovate in this space. When so many times other narratives can take over, right? When we hit the wall. Inclusion, enacted and experienced. It's the stuff that we do and the stuff that we feel. So it's enacted through deliberate actions, strategies, specific interventions we decide in which we're valuing diversity. And it's achieved. Who gets to decide if we're inclusive? It's the members of equity-seeking groups. It's centering those folks. They're the ones who decide whether the place is inclusive. Do they feel valued, respected, safe, supported, like they belong? This is Caitlin's quote, like they belong in the space. Do they feel like they have input, meaningful input into decisions made? Do you see yourself there? And I'm going to ask, I just don't know what time it is, and I'm worried about going over.
It's 2 o'clock, Lucie.
Okay, thank you. Accessibility, building physical, social, psychological environments that allow people to work at their best, able to complete unhindered tasks requisite to their current roles, and roles to which they aspire. So really quickly, why do a survey? Like I said, we're using it as a tool. What I very much want to avoid and is a situation, again, where there's another 50 years of now EDIA research and nothing happens, right? We had diversity interventions for the past 50 years. And, the equity dial's barely moved. We need genuine action, not performativity, not fancy statements with no substance. We need action. We need it to be systematic, methodical, and inclusive. And psychologists are really good at the tools that we need for this. So the survey, okay. In a nutshell, the purpose is to establish a baseline. So what is the diversity in our department of students, faculty, of staff, so non-student workers? What is our department made of? And how do people feel in all the contexts, in the classroom, in the labs, in their workplaces, in their offices? And what is it? So what is our culture like? What's the training, work, access to resources, opportunities? And I want to, I don't know, now I'm going to use a silly, I don't know, phrase, like put our money where our mouth is. But, you know, when I say we're genuine, you know, we're not going to do a survey that is just going to give us some information and then it has no context. There's a framework, and we've been talking about this. I put it together like this. We haven't necessarily, you know, put it in this many words together, but this is what we're talking about. You know, what are we doing with this? We're taking the data. We're using it for strategic planning. We're going to propose changes based on your input as psychology department members, addressing those who are part of our department. We're going to build capacity. This conference is one of those capacity building activities. We're going to implement and monitor those changes. And then again, the cycle continues of evaluation, because as the previous presenter said, it's not a, you know, it's not a one and done. EDIA is a conversation, and it's a collaboration, and there is no end date to it. Okay, I just want to leave you with this one, the knowledge to action gap. So I teach, anyway, I have a lot of roles. So as I mentioned, I'm co-chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'm also the graduate program coordinator of the Master of Applied Health Services and Research Program. And there I teach knowledge translation. There's 100 words for that, but basically taking what we know and implementing it and using it, you know, giving our knowledge to the folks, connecting the knowledge with the folks who can benefit most from it. And so we know from that area, and it's mostly in health research, this is where it came out of, that we have an awesome scientific finding. Whoa, like we have so many findings in journals right now just sitting there, and it takes 17 years. We know how actually to treat cancer better. Yep. And that's going to sit there in the journal if we don't take, you know, close the gap. It's going to sit there in the journal for the next 17 years. So we talk about closing that gap, the knowing doing. This is the same thing I see as the truth to power gap. To me, it's just so obvious. And I really want to explain this. So we have here a timeline, and it goes from 10,000 before the Common Era, and it is up to 2021. And I just want to describe briefly this timeline. At the top, it's different milestones for diverse folks. I can say, I don't even like that term. I'll say for milestones for Black Canadians and Black women and Indigenous folks. It's a couple of examples. And on the bottom is the colonizer timeline. Okay, so the two examples I have. In 1853, Mary Shad Carey publishes The Provincial Freeman in Ontario. She was a freed slave. She came to Ontario. There's a great large Black community. And she became a lawyer, and she started a paper, and she called for women's right to vote. Yeah, women's right to vote. 1853. The women's suffrage movement, it was 65 years later that women won their right to vote, largely excluding Black women actually out of that. What happened in between? Well, she was fighting it. And then Confederation happens and says, you know what, we're just going to actually specify that only males can vote. They didn't have to do that, but they did that. Only males. It reads only males can vote at the time. So 65 years from her truth, Carrie's truth, to actually some women getting the right to vote, but not all, right? The other one are the children. And I actually had to look up, what is the word for genocide of children? Infantogenocide, right? Who, well, by what policy would it ever be acceptable for thousands and thousands of children to be killed in school? And what is the knowledge truth to power gap? So imagine the first parent whose kid did not return home. That's truth. There's not a lot of, we say we can't prove things in science. We can't say what's totally true. What's true is that first parent said, where's my kid? The government said nothing. 190 years later, in the 1970s, when I was born, graves were found. I didn't know. This wasn't part of my education. But it was truth. It's been truth for 190 years. So we need to close that gap. Truth to power. Because the truth is there. We have to take out all the obstacles in its way. So please complete the survey. And sorry if I went over time. I stopped paying attention to the colors. Thank you, Julia, for trying, if you tried to stop me. And thanks to everybody. And just a reminder, we're having an after talk debrief for those online, and Linda session for those in person. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucie, for that, for sharing your perspective and advertising our survey. In that event, I'm going to close us. Yes, of course.